What we'll do is get David up here, who's on the board of Unlock Australia. Ruthie, I'll get you to introduce David and tell a little bit about what he does and who he is.
This is Dave Luke, who used to work with me at, well, not necessarily with me, but in Sydney at Four-Wheel Drive Action headquarters, until he realised that you can't just work for love when you've got a baby on the way. And Dave is on the board of directors. He's also responsible for organising most of this event. He and his wife Lisa, who is in the merchandise tent there, the very pregnant looking Lisa, are typical of the sort of people who work with me on Unlock Australia, in as much as they find the time and they put in the effort. There's no money in it. They're doing it because they love it and because they've got kids coming through. They want to take their kids camping too. You would have seen the photo in the newspaper possibly if you live here yesterday. That was Rick's dad and Rick's kids. 3 generations of people who've been camping on Stockton Beach who might not be able to in future. Dave.
Great. I love public speaking. I normally like sitting out the back when no one actually sees me, but that's all right. So I just wanted to say quickly, Rick's got some questions that have been coming in via Facebook and via all of our emails and stuff like that. And there's just a couple of questions that really highlight some of the key issues with the Stockton area, but also issues all over the country. Now, Unlock Australia has a plan and a good plan going forward. Now, one of the tricky parts about all these things is you have to speak to the right people to get results. Obviously, the great thing about days like this is this kind of numbers is what gets us into those meetings that allows us to have the conversations on every one of your behalf. And I can tell you now that Unlock Australia does not have the interests of anybody, any specific group. It has the interest of all general outdoor lovers. Right, so forget any groups that might have their own goals. All we want to see is access to as many people, as many Australians as possible. All right, so one of the great things about this rally, and it's already a victory for us, is the fact that we got the chance, myself and Slav, one of the other directors, who, the poor guy, he's been standing collecting donations for the kiddies' Jeep rides all day, forgot his jumper, forgot his umbrella, and he's still standing there, wobbling a little bit, but he's still doing that, and he can't get up here because he's over there. But we got the chance to go and have a meeting with the guys from the Worimi and National Parks, and then we learned a lot of interesting things, and a lot of things that we didn't agree with, obviously, as you would understand, but a lot of things that cleared up a couple of things in our minds. Now, they've asked us, and I know a lot of you sent submissions off, and that was perfect. It covers all the stuff that we're about. And I can tell you now that they were a bit worried about all those submissions that came in because they've got to go through every single one. That's part of the procedure. They're going to go through every single one, so they're going to see everyone's name who sent one in. They're going to have to go through that and listen to our ideas. Now, we've put a formal submission with a couple of really great concepts and ideas that we want to see applied right across the country, because ultimately what it comes down to is we want to access our country 100%. Fishing, four-wheel driving, caravans, all that kind of stuff. But what we all understand, and as you've seen from our Dob in a Beep campaign, which I won't say here, but we really want to watch out, and none of us guys and girls and families who want to experience these areas, none of us like seeing guys ripping donuts in the corner, leaving rubbish, any of that kind of stuff. Those people, if they're going to be out there and they're going to damage the areas, they shouldn't access those areas, realistically. All right? We know that we want the right people accessing the bush, and that's 99% of us care about the bush. Those people that leave rubbish, etc., behind, damage it for all of us. So one of the big campaigns Unlock's going to be running going forward is the Dob in a Beep mentality, right? Where we get everybody to, if you see someone being an idiot, right? You see someone doing that, you take a photo, you send it to us, right? We've already had, there's about 30 or 40 that have come in since we started it, which is great, with photos, etc. And the details of those people have been passed on to the appropriate authorities. Quite a few from Fraser Island came through, and the Fraser Island police have been ecstatic with the fact that we're giving these guys information that they can cut down on that. So that's a big thing that we're doing, and part of what we're going to do right across the Stockton area as well is to try and get a lot of accountability from you guys who are out using the area to get that 1% of people who don't care out of there, because that's the problem that stuffs all of us up. So that's one of the big things. So I guess Rick's going to have a couple of questions that's come through, and we're going to highlight just a couple of things. And John, yeah?
Thanks, Dave. How good's he, eh? I don't like public speaking, he says. And I know how it ties him up. But that's how much he loves this cause. Now listen, guys. Camera from NBN's here is going to be on the news 6 o'clock tonight. And what we need is a massive show of enthusiasm, okay? That's what they need. That's what makes the news. You know how it works. So on a count of 3, can I get everyone just roaring out as loud as you can, okay? Horns if you're in cars, whatever. Just need as much noise as possible on the count of 3. And arms in the air. Let's make it look good. 1, 2, 3. Yay! Yo! 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 Thank you very much. Love your work, guys. Love your work. Thank you.
That's gold. Fair dinkum. Okay, so
have
I've
got
got...
Slav here?
Nah, Slav couldn't make it, mate. He's carrying the can over at the kiddies' cars. There's a tongue twister for you. All right, so what I've got...
Somebody else who doesn't like
Public
being in
speaking.
public, but works so hard behind the scenes. I'm just going to tell you about my mate Slav. He won't like that. I know he won't. He won't. He's a grey nomad. He's older than me. He saw Noah build the ark. He's also a very, very successful businessman, or he was, still is. Yeah, Rick used to work for Slav. One of many. And he loves this country. And he's seen what's happened too in his life. And so when I asked him for a little bit of mentoring, you know, like, mate, got a big job on our hands here, haven't got a clue how to go about it, he was one of the first people to step in. And that's why we dobbed him in as a director. And a lot of the ideas you're going to hear from my mouth, Dave's mouth, they come from people who really know their stuff. We already have, in the short history of Unlock Australia, a professional lobbyist who's come on side. He got us a meeting with the Worimi and the National Parks, who suddenly had to put the brakes on because they realised, hang on, there's people involved here, not just us. We're learning, guys. You know, all I know how to do is, yeah, not much. Yeah, you're right. Who's been talking to my wife? Yeah. We didn't have a clue about how to get the government's attention. All we knew was that there was a lot of people who felt the same way. And slowly, we're getting the people on side who are making the difference, who are going to make the changes. We're meeting with the minister. We're meeting with the opposition member. We're meeting with people who might make a difference. Doesn't stop here, though. You're going to have to join. And that's the other thing, too. I haven't heard anyone say it yet. Membership is free of Unlock Australia. Just go to the website and join, please. We've got thousands and thousands of members, but if you're not a member and you care about this, you should be. And you should get everybody you know to join. Because at the end of the day, when you strut into a meeting and you go, I'm here representing me and me 7 mates, it's not much use. But if you go in there and say, look, I represent 850,000 people, politicians' ears prick up further than when they're telling fibs. Okay, sorry about that. Can't help it. Rick?
All right, so what we've got here, there's been a lot of interest surrounding what's going on with Stockton. That's obviously the big deal that we're talking about today. And a lot of people want to know exactly what's going on. So what I've done is I've collated a list of 5 of the most popular questions that have come up a lot. And the boys that are on the board here at Unlock Australia are going to, whoever's best situated to answer the question will do so. So the number one question that's being asked is, in the plan, rubbish gets a big mention. So how does Unlock Australia think that we can fix this problem on Stockton?
Okay. First thing is, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know if you're aware, last year the most sensible organisation in Australia, the Country Women's Association, I'm from the bush, so I know a lot about the CWA and what they've done in the past, pushed hard nationally for a container deposit scheme for all Australia, like South Australia's. Pick up any soft drink bottle, beer can, whatever, 10 cents if you return it in South Australia. What's the result? No litter in South Australia. What's the biggest problem on Stockton Beach? Idiots drinking beer, chucking their cans into the fire. You put a 10-cent deposit on all of that, and straight away, you've solved 95%. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And you know why it hasn't happened? Because I don't think the big guys can see any political points in it. Maybe they should look at what we want, you know. So we've got to push hard for that nationally and state by state. Second thing, everybody I know at a local council level in New South Wales has been really upset by the fact that a group called the Environmental Protection Agency, here's a misnomer, have in 4 years, and I think you might be able to correct me if I get this wrong, put a 30% levy every year on the rubbish you take to the tip. Is that right? So now it's 120% on what the council fee should be, which according to my research means $240 or north to take a trailer load of rubbish to a tip. Now, why the hell are they doing that? So they can fund gates to stop people dropping rubbish in the bush. Oh, come on. If you make rubbish even council paid fees, get rid of all that huge amount. People might take it to the tip. Backpackers might go, oh, hang on, I don't need to live here. It's not going to cost me 2 cartons of beer, my monthly ration. I'll take it to the tip. You have to make, I know local councils work hard on rubbish pickups. That's their solution. Quite often they'll do 1 or 2 a month. It's great, you know, you get to shuffle everyone's rubbish, pick up the things you haven't got. I always go for the ab trimmers myself. First thing that gets left out at the next rubbish tip, yes. How simple would it be to change that? They call themselves the Environmental Protection Agency. What a load of crap. Sorry, but it is. Thank you. So, it's way too dear. In fact, I read in the newspaper when I was in Tasmania that people in New South Wales take their rubbish to Victoria because it's cheaper to dump. Hey guys, wake up to this. And you know who's doing it? It's the same government-funded, conservation greens-minded people that have gone through university and who reckon it's a really good idea to do it. Idiots. No common sense. I'm not saying that only working people, only people from the bush, only people who have to fight hard to pay taxes and bring their kids up know what common sense is, but there's a big connection. There are other things we should be doing at Stockton. We should have a gating system. Oh yeah, we're going to explain that in a minute. But part of that would be cameras. So we can see if you bought your trailer load of fridges in, for heaven's sake. But I think just those 2 things alone would solve a whole lot of problems. The biggest one for me though, and it covers a whole range of other questions that are probably going to get asked, is sorry? Oh, Dave's talking to himself. Is education. How long since we did that Don't Rubbish Australia campaign? That was in the late 1970s when I was, I was going to say I was a teenager, but that's lying. I remember it well. And before that, everybody dropped rubbish, okay? It was just the normal thing to do. Dubbo to Lightning Ridge, where I used to work, 6-can trip, bang, out the window. Didn't think anything of it, okay? Until they came along and said, hey, that's shameful. Anyone see, they actually had talking rubbish bins, most of you are too young to remember this, that said, oi, you, pick it up and put it over here. Stupid stuff like that, and it worked a beauty. Well, we need to do that again. We need to make people feel, people who drop rubbish in the bush, we need to make them feel like they don't belong in the bush. They don't even belong in this country. We don't like them. What they're doing is shameful. Thank you. And it's the same with the vandals too. But, you know, let's not go there. We're just people who love the country. Sorry, Rick.
All right, mate. One of the other questions that's come up a lot is people saying, until I read the plan, I didn't even know what a midden site looked like. Can I have a show of hands? Who doesn't know what a midden site looks like? Yeah, quite a few. And it's understandable. How are we meant to avoid them if we don't know what they look like? Bloody good question.
Yeah, well, this is a big one that was brought up in the meeting the other week. And one of the things that we went back to the Worimi and something that we're pushing with them is the biggest thing about that area is really education, right? The amount of times, and I said it in the meeting to the guys, I said, look, to be completely honest, when I first went to Stockton Beach and got my bit of paper from Lavis Lane, I didn't read the thing, it went straight on the dash with my pass. And I went for a drive, I wouldn't have known that a bunch of shells was an important, significant Aboriginal cultural site, right? So one of the things that we're pushing for with this is why don't, at Stockton, right, in order to get your permit, right, you've got to buy your permit to go on the beach. There's no problem with that because that maintains and keeps stuff going. And all that money actually goes to the Worimi people to maintain that. Now, the thing that we're suggesting they do, right, think about this. Like any other place that you go to, people who visit an area want to know a little bit about the culture of that area, right? You want to know how it started, some of the stories of that area, right? So why don't they invest a little bit of money in putting together a little online, everything's going online these days, right? In order to get your permit, you've got to go online, watch a little video that tells you what a site looks like, tells you where you can camp, tells you all the information you need about your trip to the beach, right? You go through that process, answer a couple of questions so you know all the details. It says, which one of these pictures is a midden site? You know, if you click the one with the bag of rubbish, it's probably not the right one. All right, so you pick the stuff. So you're saying that you understand what the sites are and what you need to watch out for. Because they are, this is something, guys, it is really close to their hearts, these sites, right? It is really important to them. And it's something, and ultimately you've got to think about this. The whole part of Stockton, quite a few years ago, was reclaimed as land for the Worimi people, right? So it's not owned by National Parks, it's owned by them. National Parks manage it. So they could ultimately say to us, sorry guys, can't come in. They legally can do that. And that's scary, right? That is scary for all of us. So what we need to do is help them because they want us to experience that area. So one of our suggestions is to create an online program where you get your permits, right? So when you click yes and you get your permit printed out on a bit of paper, right? You've said that you know what a site looks like. You've said that you know that you need to take your rubbish out. And you've said that you know the suggested areas of camping if they do that. Not that we don't want that. We want to have unrestricted all over the whole beach. 100%. Right, but you should know the details. Now, if you get caught driving over a midden site, now a midden site, just so I can explain that, big, a couple of different ways. There's either big black sites that are the stuff that's come up through the sand, or big lots of white shells. That's what the sites look like. And if you go to the Worimi website, there's great examples of that so you can see it yourself. And there's some horrible examples of photos of four drive tracks running straight through the middle of them. And we know that most of that is through ignorance and people not understanding, but there are some people that go out there and do that on purpose. But what we reckon is, if you get caught by a ranger driving over one of those sites, I'm sorry, but you should be fined. 100%. You should not be driving and damaging those areas. And same with leaving rubbish on the beach. If you get caught leaving rubbish, I don't care if they fine you $5,000. You shouldn't be leaving your rubbish there. All right, that's as much as it comes down to. Okay? Because we need, thank you guys, we need to show these people that we care about the land just as much as they do. Right? Because it's part of our heritage to get out there and experience the beach. You know, there's a great book that John will probably talk to you a little bit about that's come out that's got some great information about how Aussies all through time have camped. The first fleet in tents. You know, in the wars we're in tents over in Egypt, etc., etc. It's an Aussie way of life. And we want to get out there and do that wherever we can, whenever we can. But we want to do it in a way that's sustainable and also a way that means we're not damaging the environment. So one of our suggestions to them is this online education program where you guys go on, get your passes through that, and if you do the wrong thing, it's on you, effectively, right? And to stop idiots getting in there who go, you know what, I don't give a crap about a permit, I'm just going to drive on the beach myself. Quite simply, right? You think about parking structures, right, that have the parking boom gates, right? Really easy. One of them at each end of the beach, right? You got your permit, you scan it, you go on the beach. Perfect. It's not locking anyone out at all. If you got your permit and you know where you can drive and what you should take your rubbish with you, you're on the beach straight away. It's accountability, not restriction at all, because you're allowed on the beach. No one's stopped from going on the beach. You just need to know what areas are significant and that you can't leave rubbish behind. I think that's one of the big things that we're putting to these guys, to not restrict it, but to make sure that people who are going to damage the area are held accountable for doing that.
Too right. And you know what? Dave and some of our other guys have done research on this, and it's actually cheaper in this age of technology to install an airport-style boom gate with a little camera that recognises your car and your number plate and issues you with a little ticket, and it can even have a bank card swipe on the side and a solar power pack, and it's cheaper than taking a bunch of steel to a Boilermaker. I know a lot of Boilermakers, you know, they get very thirsty at the end of the day. It's cheaper to sort it out with technology, and they still don't do it. Thanks, Dave. Awesome.
All right, one of the other questions that comes up, and this is one that I can certainly vouch for personally. In the past, I've been on Stockton, and I'm sure most of you have, and you've counted, you know, literally scores of camping sites, sometimes in excess of 60, 70, even 80. You know, nobody's camped in each other's pockets. It's a fantastic thing, and that's a big part of why we go to Stockton. Now, in the plan, it calls for just 30 campsites. What is ULA's, or Unlock Australia's, stance on this?
Well, first of all, the 30 is a gimme number. And by a gimme number, I mean up to is the important bit. Because they don't know where they want to put those 30 campsites. And they're already saying, oh, maybe we'll just have 5 or 10 to start with, you know. And, of course, they're going to charge for them. That's fair enough. I don't know if it is, to be honest. But to camp somewhere where there's no facilities, you shouldn't really be charged if you're Australian. You should only have to pay for showers and toilets and things like that. But you know why they're saying we don't know where we're going to put these campsites? Because of the storm activities 2 years ago. Now, none of us here have lived long enough to see a storm like that, because that's what they call a once-in-100 years occasion. It might happen again next year, but then it won't happen for another 200 years or something. You know what I mean? What has that got to do with campsites? Nothing. People use their common sense. They get educated. They know what to avoid. If you want to pitch your tent at low tide down near the ocean waves, well, good luck to you. You know, really. You're going to learn fairly swiftly that's not a good place to camp. Common sense is a bit of a dying thing in Australia, but honestly, I think people who enjoy the outdoors have to have it here in Australia, or they're not going to enjoy it for very long. It's something we all, I think, tend to share in. There's one other thing here that they bring up, and they go, oh, yeah, but if, you know, what about the liability issues? What if someone sues us? I've never heard of anyone suing national parks. I don't think you'd even bother, would you? You know? Where are you going to get doing that? They'll just change the rules. That's not the point. They use it as an excuse. So when you go for your permit, fill out a little liability thing that says, you're not liable, I am, if I do anything stupid. And as to how many campsites, well, even the national parks numbers suggest that at peak times of year, there's 2,500 people camped on the beach. Now, I've been there at Christmas, peak time. You don't see anyone else. You don't see anyone else because it's how many hectares did we work out? I can't remember. It was huge. It's a huge amount. 16,000 or something? Sorry, numbers and me doesn't work that well, but Slav and I were at it late last night trying to work out the actual proportions involved, and massive amount of area. That's why you don't see anyone. So why on earth would you even mention 30 campsites? You're catering to 60 people when it's been proven by parks that 2,500 people like to go, and the place is big enough to swallow the lot of them. Do we want to live in a world where you have to book ahead 3 months ahead to take your kids up the beach for an overnight camp and a bit of whiting fishing and watch the sun come up? And no, we don't want that, do we? No. We're quite happy to go and get a permit, pay a few bucks possibly for the privilege, but we don't want to live in a world, in Australia, biggest land on earth per capita, like that. Sorry, Rick, have we got any more? Yeah, so, mate. Unlike Australia thinks unrestricted camping once you've got a permit.
All right, mate, one more question is, the big question really, what happens next with Stockton, and then what else for the rest of Australia as far as Unlock Australia is concerned?
All right, so the deal with Stockton is submissions close tomorrow. That's why we had this today. So I urge you, if you haven't done it yet, right, if you haven't sent a submission in yet, when you get home tonight, get online. On our website, we had a couple of issues with so much traffic, the website kind of flipped over and put its legs up in the air. But what we've done is the boys from Forward of Action have still got a link on their page. It's forwardofaction.com.au/SaveOurStockton. You can go there, send your submission in your name, make it count. So that's the first thing, right? I think that's the first thing. Yeah, sorry. The second thing is after it finishes submissions, right? It's still not sold and done. There's a whole process, and we got to explain this the other day. What happens is they need to look at all the submissions, then they need to come up with another version of it that takes into account those things. And I can tell you now, if they just go, oh, none of that matters, we're just going to leave it as it is, we're going to make a hell of a lot of noise. All right, 100%, because we've got some very good ideas that need to be taken and thought about in this submission. Okay, there's a good chance, and we'd like to see all of them put in, and we're going to push stupid hard for that. But they need to listen to us, and they need to understand that we represent, and you guys represent, the outdoor lover of Australia. Not a small group who just wants to access a little area, not a small group who all they want to do is take, and not to say anything against horse riders, perfect, I love them. But we're not from a group that just represents horse riders. We represent horse riders, fishers, caravanners, forward drivers, quad bike riders, dirt bike riders, everybody who accesses that area and loves being outdoors. After it does that process, it then goes to government, to the ministers, right? And that's why we've got meetings teed up in the next week or so where we're going to be chatting to those ministers directly. And these are the ministers that said to the Worimi and said to the board of the Land Council, you have to talk to these guys, right? When we spoke to Robin Parker, who is the Minister for National Parks, she said, you guys have to talk to these guys and put us in contact. That they hadn't come to us to ask for anything before then. So that got us the meeting. So we've got some inroads with all those ministers to chat to. And I can tell you now, once this hits the news tonight, right, and once all you guys cheering on the news happens, I can guarantee you that during next week, all those ministers that sent me emails in the last week going, I'm really sorry, but I'm really busy and I couldn't make it. I really wanted to be there. I reckon there's going to be another email that goes, can we chat? All right? Because you're going to see all these people. And that's because you came. That's because all of you got here today and took time out of your day to drive up here and be part of this. So that's where it goes forward from there. But I guess in terms of Unlock Australia, I'll let John talk where we're going from there.
Oh, good on you, Dave. He must have got paid by the word once too, eh? Righto. Well done, mate. For someone who doesn't like it, you're doing so good. And that's the future of Unlock Australia. Guys of Dave's generation. It might be starting with people like me who want to see our kids and grandkids into the bush, but it's got to be kept going by everybody else, okay? Now, our biggest problem always has been as Aussies that if we're working hard, we tend to be apathetic about everything else. We don't have time to get too involved in lots of issues. We have our favourite charities and we give a few bucks and, you know, we like to go bush. That's usually our big thing. We'll just go bush because there's been so much bush in the past and you can just go and hide and get away from all that stuff. Well, stop being apathetic. That's what Unlock Australia is all about. And if you haven't joined by tonight, I'm personally going to come around to your place, knock on the door and ask you why. Okay? And if you haven't rung up your mum and your dad and everybody else and said, remember when you took me camping, you can't do that anymore, I want you to go to this website and join. It doesn't cost a penny. We just need the numbers. It's the numbers today, like Dave said. It's the numbers from the last rally, 48 kilometres of vehicles stretching from here to Cessnock. Well done. Well done. That's what brought all this about. It's numbers. And as Aussies, just ordinary Aussies who pay our taxes and hit the bush on the weekends, we're not usually very bothered by that stuff. Well, you better be, or you're going to lose your country to a little minority elitist group of people who have been loud for a long, long time. It's as simple as that. The fight started here in Newcastle because Newcastle people are really good at fighting. Hang on, that's a memory of my youth. But it's true. It is true. You guys have always stood up for your rights, you know? It also started here because this is the most obvious case where we're being ripped off blind of our own heritage, okay? Everywhere I look, I see massive government-funded edifices to minority groups. I don't see anything for us, ordinary people. This is not right. There's nothing racist about my message at all. The message is very simple. This is Australia. It's Australia in 2014. We all live here. And we want to access our bush. We don't care about anything else, just that. That's a biggie. From that, a whole lot of other things should flow. So it's really going to be up to you guys. It's really going to be up to all the kids who are here going, geez, that Roothy's a boring old prat. It's going to be up to everybody to push this wheelbarrow, okay? Some of us are pushing real hard. We need everyone else to hop in. It's going to be a long fight, guys, but the tide's turning already. I just came back from Tassie. 52% of Tassie's been locked up. Bob Green's solution to the future of Tasmania. I couldn't believe this. This shows green mentality at its best. And I've got to admit, when Bob started saying he wanted to save the Franklin, as a sand miner on Fraser Island, I went, yeah, mate, we need to. We got to stop bulldozing some of the most beautiful places on earth. I was that far behind him. Hang on, not a good thing to say about him. But I would have backed the guy, you know what I mean? And I did. But it's all gone skewy. His plan for Tasmania is that the 500,000 people who live there is too much. It's taxing the environment too much. There should only be 250,000. Now, I wouldn't mind betting that he'd like to get rid of all the people who use chainsaws, ride trail bikes, drive four-wheel drives, go fishing, quad bikes. In other words, all the people who work for a living. Who does he think's going to do the work if there's 250,000 civil servants or whatever they are, greenies? Or even the teachers won't have people to teach. That's ridiculous, guys. It's a big country. That's the future, all of you. Did that answer the question, or did I go off on a rabbit again?
I think there might have been a bit of a hint there and a few too many nights at the Sunnyside Tavern, mate, all the fighting in Newcastle. Jeez.
Wasn't there a pub down in Hunter Street called the Pigs, or the Bay of Pigs, or the War Pigs? Or
Something like that, yeah.
Vague memories. Anyway, Hunter Street, yay.
All right, well, before I introduce our next speaker to the stage, and I'll get Paul to come up now if you don't mind, mate, what I would like to do is ask you all to join me in personally thanking the board of Unlock Australia. John alluded to it earlier. There's a lot of hard workers behind the scenes there. They're donating their time, and I can tell you from first-hand experience being involved with these guys, it is a massive amount of time. They all have full-time jobs, and some of them even have 2 jobs, and they still manage to find that time. And it is a phenomenal effort. So well done, guys. Thank you so much for fighting on our behalves. Now, to have a bit of a chat here with John, I've got Councillor Paul Lamott from the Port Stephens Council. Thanks for being here, mate.
Thanks very much. Ladies and gentlemen, shutting the gate is not the answer. It's not the answer at Stockton, and it's not the answer anywhere else in Australia. I'm here today because I'm an avid four-wheel driver and camper, not so much because I'm a councillor, but I do intend to use whatever influence I can to support the Unlock Australia campaign.
Thank you.
The Worimi conservation lands that we all tend to think of as Stockton is jointly managed by the Worimi people and by the National Parks and Wildlife Service. The Worimi people are A1 citizens in Port Stephens. The National Parks and Wildlife are not.
Oh, yeah, well said.
They could have done a lot more to lessen the impact of recent bushfires that we had in Port Stephens. They are totally inflexible with their policies, and they throw more money at gates than the Microsoft Corporation.
I think I'll move to Port Stephens and vote for Paul.
Well, I was going to mention that Senator Roothy's starting to sound pretty good too, mate. Yeah, we tried it once. We might try it again later.
Yeah, it was frighteningly close. Don't do it to me ever.
As I said at the start, shutting the gate is not the answer. There is a rich culture on Stockton Beach for the Worimi people, and that must be respected at all times. But shutting people out is not the answer. The Stockton sand dunes are the biggest mobile sand mass anywhere in the southern hemisphere, and I think 2nd or 3rd in the entire world, which is pretty substantial when you think about Sahara deserts and places like that. So what happens at Stockton Beach is from time to time middens or other artefacts will be covered over with sand, and at other times they will be exposed. So that means it's a constant battle for anybody that's managing that area to keep track of where artefacts or cultural relics exist and trying to protect them. In order to do that, they need money and they need resources. In order to get money and resources, the more people that go to Stockton pay for their permits, even if we've all got to pay a bit more, is one part of the solution. It's not the only part, but it's one part of the solution. Education is another big part. I personally think that just being able to rock up and buy a permit is a bit too easy. As Dave said, he got given a bit of paper which had a few maps and a bit of information on it. He stuck it on his dashboard. If you could introduce a system where perhaps you did it online, where you had to watch a video and answer some questions before you got to the opportunity to pay for your permit, or if you could go to the Marook Centre, which is along Nelson Bay Road, about halfway up Nelson Bay, sit in there, watch a video and answer a few questions before you got a permit. All things like that relating to education will help. Shutting the gate entirely won't help. Now, I need to clarify too. They've poo-hooed us a bit because they're saying they're not shutting the gate. Well, they're not shutting the gate entirely. That's correct. There are still parts of Stockton Beach where you'll be able to drive on the dunes and apparently drive up and down the waterfront. But the part of the dunes that they're leaving open, that's a bit like if you're a skier and you suddenly turn up at Perisher and you're told, well, the beginner slopes are open but the rest of the mountain's closed, so you just have to deal with that. You'll get a massive concentration of people in that one area. It won't be good for safety, and I'm afraid I just don't agree with it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I really support the work of Unlock Australia. I'm glad to see so many people here today, and I have to ask you, I know that most of you would rather stick pins in your eyes and start dealing with politics, but I need you to go home tonight. It's the last day, and make a submission on the. You need to Google, if you can't find the four-wheel drive action link, just Google Worimi Conservation Lands. You'll find it easy enough. Make a submission. It's important. This is good. This is very important. It's a public showing, but you need to make that submission. And we also need to get behind Senator Roothy here at the next federal election.
Thank you, Paul. And that's the voice of common sense local, isn't it? You know, that's what's missing in this debate all along. People with common sense who live here and know the place.